So welcome to today's Learning Objectives webinar. And today we are going to cover what you can do with Adobe Acrobat DC. And Adobe Acrobat DC is the latest and greatest version of Adobe Acrobat. And like many other products on the market, it has gone to a subscription model. So basically, Adobe X and X1 are no longer supported by Adobe, and they're pushing you to either get Adobe Acrobat Pro DC or Standard DC, although you can buy the standalone non-subscription based model for $449. Now, one of the things that they've done, which is not particularly great, is that used to be you had a version of Adobe Acrobat. It was an installed piece of software. You could keep it as long as you wanted to. When they quit supporting it or came out with a new one, they would give you an upgrade discount. They don't do that anymore. So if you want the installed version, you have to get 2017. It's $449 and there's no upgrade, and that's per license. The DC model it's DC because it's document cloud. And so basically they've added some cloud-based functionality to it, and we'll talk about some of the benefits of that. It's $14.99 per user per month. For an annual commitment, it's about $1 more per month if you don't commit to an annual subscription. And then if you have more than 3 licenses, you get 5% off. Now, one of the benefits with the Pro DC model is it is, something that you add to your monthly spend. But it is actually slightly more expensive over like a 2 or 3 year period than the old software version. So it just depends on kind of what you need and what you want. We'll talk about the differences. One thing to note though is that Adobe Acrobat, the installed or the DC version, work on Macs and PCs, which is unique to this product because a lot of the other stuff that does similar things doesn't work on a Mac. So what are the differences? There's a long list. The things that I pulled out that might be useful to attorneys between the Pro DC versus the standard version is that you can use the Pro on your iPad. So if you're in court and you need to make a change to a document and upload it or whatever, you can do that on your iPad. It's Mac and Windows compatible. You can convert the documents now to ISO standards like the PDF-A. There's some bells and whistles with scans. You can, most importantly, probably for a lot of you who are filing, add Bates numbering, and then you can also do redaction. So redaction is not in the standard version. So if you're doing an e-filing and you have redaction requirements, this is the Pro is what you want to use. So that's what we're going to demonstrate on today. Because I think that's the one that most people are going to find most useful. And it's only $2 per user per month more. So unless you've got a whole lot of users, it doesn't really make any difference. So you might as well go with DC. So why go with the DC version, the subscription model versus the install? Well, for one thing, you can get access to the full version of Adobe through the browser, through apps, through iPad, on your phone. They also give you document storage. The document storage is the document cloud. You can use whatever online document storage you use. So if you use Dropbox or you use OneDrive or you use Google Docs, you can actually hook the product up to those different storage repositories. You don't have to use their dynamic cloud. You can also review, track, and share documents with DC, which we're going to look at, and then the e-signatures, which you can send a document to a client or another attorney or someone else and ask them to fill it out. If once they get that document, they don't have to have Adobe. They'll click on a link, it'll pull up in a browser, whether that's on their mobile device or on their computer. They can sign it with their finger, they can sign it with a stylus, or they can type their name out and then fill it in. And that's really convenient in terms of a workflow, and certainly a lot faster than sending someone a print document and asking them to sign it and send it back into you. So this is a screenshot of the browser version, and basically you can use this however you want to. in the browser. So if you're not at your own computer, you just log into Adobe and you've got the full version of Adobe Acrobat wherever you are, as long as you have access to a browser. So that's convenient. Other things, this is a kind of screenshot of it on your iPad, so you have the full version of Adobe DC on your phone or your iPad. I think on your phone it would be kind of difficult to use, but on an iPad it certainly would be convenient. And this is kind of what it looks like again. You can, one of the benefits of doing this on your iPad is because, or if you have a touchscreen or a convertible device, you can actually use your finger or your stylus and mark up a PDF. So you can certainly do that with the editing tools on your desktop, but if you're on the go and you just need to review a document and mark it up, put comments and things like that, you can do this very easily on any kind of touchscreen device. So if you haven't upgraded to Acrobat DC or the new 2017 version, you will notice that Acrobat has a funny way of changing the interface quite dramatically every time they upgrade their product. So if you're using X or X1, this interface is going to take a minute to get used to, but the good thing is it's actually easier, and if you have any familiarity with Acrobat, then you just type in the tool that you want to use, and I'll show you how that works. But it's actually, again, if you have familiarity with the tool already, then you knew what you wanted to do, you just type it in and go. So basically you've got a couple of things to note. There's a home button and that'll show your recent documents, which I find very convenient. But we'll also look at some other features in that home. And then the tools button, that that's going to get you to this screen. And so you open up on a screen before you open a document that shows you all the tools, and you'll see this search tools. This I use constantly. I don't feel like having to navigate through all these different menus. I know what I want to do, so I just type it, but you can look in all the different menus. And then once you've opened up a document, things kind of shift around. So it shows you on the left-hand side which tools you're using. It adds a toolbar to the top to give you more functions and features for that specific tool set that you're using. And then all of your tools kind of shift over to the far right. So if you need to get to a different tool, you can just click over here. Once you're finished with this particular tool, you can click on close, and then you can pick a different tool depending on what you're doing. The other thing, like Microsoft Office, there's a million different ways to do any one thing. I'm going to show you the way I do things, but that doesn't mean it's going to always be the way you do things. And the other thing that is similar to Microsoft Office is that you can create custom tools. So there's a toolbar that you can add your own custom tools, which is the quick access toolbar at the top, and you just right click and add your tools so they're always launched up in the top. Or you can go to create custom tools on the main page and then select the things, and that's going to add this over to this column. So for instance, the typewriter tool is something that I use a lot. It's under Edit PDF, but I just like to call it out. So you can go ahead and make your own kind of customized tools for the things that you use most frequently. So I'm going to go through some stuff that's pretty basic and then a little bit more advanced and the actual product. So we're going to go ahead and move over into Acrobat. And the first thing I want to do is show you combining files, because there's a couple of little neat things that you can do with combined files. So you can go into your Windows Explorer, your file search, and pick files, but you can also just click on combine files like I'm going to do here. We're going to click add files, and then I can choose any file types that are supported by Acrobat. So that could be a Word document, a PDF, and what I'm doing is I'm holding down my control key so I can select different documents out of this folder. So I've selected the documents that I want to combine, and I'm going to click open. And there's two different views that you can look at. I think the default is this view, but once you change it, it'll stick. So what this does is it shows you the different documents that you've added to combine. When you mouse over it, if you say, oh, I didn't mean that one, you can delete it right away. If you want to expand it and see all the pages, you can do this. Now, needless to say, this is incredibly tiny. And so if you down here in the bottom right, you can take this slider and move it up until you can actually see the document. But for this purpose, I'm going to slide this back. If I don't need to see all these pages, and say I want to just delete page 11, easy enough, just click the delete button. When I'm kind of finished looking at that file, I can push it back together and we can see that we have these 4 files that we're going to combine. Now, the reason that I like this view a little bit better is because you get a bit more intelligence. For one thing, you get the name of the file and then the page range, which I'm going to show you in a second, the date it was created, modified, and then it automatically creates bookmarks with the file name. So say I wanted to change the bookmark names right here, right now. I can, close this, go back. Sometimes these, it's picky. Okay. Oh, you can also move the pages around, things like that. So once I click combine, it's actually going to start combining them. If there's sometimes it takes a second, but especially if it's a Word document, it's got to convert it to PDF first, and then it's combined them. It by default gives this file binder 1 as the name, and so you'll want to change that. It automatically takes the file and creates bookmarks from whatever bookmarks might have been in the document. And we'll talk a little bit more about bookmarks. If you want to change a bookmark, you just right click on it and rename and hit enter. If you don't hit enter, it actually won't stick, so don't forget to hit enter. You can see that we can close these up and so on and so forth. So it's automatically taking whatever bookmarks or styles that were in the original documents and also creating bookmarks based on the document itself. So that is that's pretty useful. Once we're in this menu and we've got this giant document, there's some other things that you can do to play around with the document. So if I want to say organize these pages, I'm going to click on organize pages, and again it's going to give me a different menu. And so now I can do things like, say I had a scanned document and this was upside down. I can just go to this page and twist it around. So you can kind of fix up that combined documents right there. You can also go into this insert and insert other files, text from your clipboard, documents that you scanned in. You can insert web pages or a blank page. So if you needed to insert a blank page because of printing needs or something, you can do that. And then you can also click on replace. When you click on replace, it's going to give you the option to replace specific pages with the file that you just chose. So that's also convenient. So if you realize you picked up the wrong version of a file, you can go back, remove the old pages, and replace it with a different file. You can extract. And so what you want to do is select the pages you want to extract, and you can either extract these as a separate file, so it's going to create another combined file with the extracted pages, or you can just delete them. Of course, you can just delete them without doing the extraction process, but if you want to extract these as a separate file, you can click on that button and extract. The other thing is you've got this split option, and you can split, and this is especially if you're filing with federal courts and they have a file size limit. You can choose what file size. So if this file size is too big for the court and it's 186 megabytes, that's the file size limit, then you can split it, and it'll basically split into two files, part 1 and part 2. And then the other thing you can do is you can split the file by top level bookmarks. And since we had bookmarks in this document, I can click on output options, and we can see that we can save it to the same folder that we started with, a different folder, and choose that folder, use the bookmarks as the file name, and then add a label. And so we can, the default is part, and it'll say 1, 2, use the separator. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Don't overwrite existing files. If you use bookmark names for file names, you don't get all these options. So we're using the label and number before the original name, which is going to keep right now binder 1 because we haven't changed it, but I'll just show you what that looks like. And then once you click split, we split it into two different files, and then you can go into your folder and find them. So the next thing we're going to look at is text editing, which is something I think people are pretty interested in doing. The other thing to note is when you open a new document in Acrobat, it acts like a tabbed browser, so it doesn't close the other one. So if I wanted to go back to that document we were working on, I can just go back up in here, or I can close it, and it'll ask me if I want to save changes. I'll say no. So looking at this document, if I wanted to edit this document, first thing to note is, was the document scanned or was it converted to PDF from Word or some other text editing tool? So if I click on this and I try to select text and I right click, I can copy, but when I click on the whole thing, if it turns blue, it's a scan. And so what you want to do is if you click on it and turns blue, then you want to run OCR over it. So I'm just going to type into search tools OCR, that's optical character recognition, and it'll pull up the toolbars that I have. So I'm going to click on recognize text. So you can choose to recognize text in all the pages, what language. If you click on settings, you can say I just want to recognize text in the current page or a range of pages. You can downsample it, do all sorts of different things here with the options. And then I'm going to click on recognize text. And it's going to convert it into a searchable image. So you'll note that it's working in the bottom, kind of converting it to a searchable document. And then we'll be able to edit it. If it's just a scanned image, we can't really make any significant edits to the text. The other thing is you'll note that there's some other tools that appear up top once you click on recognize text, and you can enhance the scan to look better. Generally, if you recognize text, it actually makes, if it's a scan, it makes the text a little cleaner and the scan look better and deskews it and does all this other stuff, so you don't even have to go through that process. Plus, it makes the file size a little bit smaller because when you run the OCR over it, it oddly turns that document into a smaller file size. So now that we've recognized the text, if you click on recognize text again, there is a button called correct recognize text. And what it does is it goes through and it tries to identify where it might have messed up. If you have a really long document, this is going to take forever, but if you want to review this, it'll show you that it thinks this image, because basically it's looking at this as an image and trying to match it against an alphabet that it has in the OCR engine, and it recognizes it 4. So, but it just basically goes through and tries to identify, did it get it right? And if you find something that is wrong, like this word consolidation is recognized, but you can make this correction by going in and putting in your O and then accept. Again, for a really long document, this is absolutely not worth it. And you can convert this to Word and do that a lot faster with spell check. So we're going to click on cancel here. Now, say I want to make some edits now that I've run the OCR over it and turned it into a text editable document. I'm going to close this tool and type in edit. And so now it's going through and letting me be able to edit this document. And one of the things that it does by default is it creates what they call bounding boxes. If this is a distraction to you, you can turn off the bounding boxes. Now, say I want to go through and make some changes to this text. I can just let it run through and do all its stuff. Double click on here, and there's a couple of things I can do with the editing. It thinks I'm in Times New Roman. I'll accept that, but you have lots of other fonts. If you wanted to add a different font, you can change the font. It recognizes as much as it can. This is 12-point font, Times New Roman, and black, but if you wanted to change it for whatever reason, you can. You can do underlining, bold, italics, all that good stuff. But if we just, say, had gotten a document in a PDF, realized there was a major misspelling, and you just needed to make some minor modifications to the document, you don't have to convert it to Word. You can just edit the text in here. So we'll say, and we've made a change to the text right in the document. This is also something to note, that anybody with a PDF manipulation tool can edit your documents, even if it's a scanned document, unless you take measures to protect the document against editing, which I'm going to show you how to do. But this is definitely something to be aware of, because just because it's a PDF or just because it's a scanned PDF doesn't mean that it's a secured document. So other things that you can do with this, say I wanted to export this to Word, you go up into the upper left, click on File, and then export to Microsoft Word, and then it will save this as a Word document if you need to make extensive changes to the document. Again, this kind of reminds you that these documents in PDF are not secure without adding additional security to them. And it'll export it to Word. The nice thing is it looks really clean when you convert it to Word for the most part. So the resulting file remarkably keeps the formatting pretty consistent, so you don't have to go through and retype anything or reformat. It just does it for you. So we'll stop this process, or attempt to, and move on to the next thing, which is the typewriter tool. So the typewriter tool is this thing. Let's see. And what I'm about to open is probably something many of you have seen. And so this is a form pulled down from the court, and we want to be able to fill it out. And so you can convert it to Word, but probably things are going to get messed up when you convert it to Word, because this is, pretty format heavy. So you can actually just fill in text on top of this document, again, using the edit features. Now, I like just to type in typewriter because that's what you're doing in essence. And when you type in type, It's going to take you to the add text, and here we are back again, except this time we're going to click on this add text button. Again, you have choices in terms of the text format, so you can change it to, if we want to kind of stay in keeping with the font they're already using, we can use Times New Roman. You can change the font color, do other things like this. But once I've kind of made all those selections, I'm going to click into the document and then start typing. If you didn't get it right on the line, you can kind of move it around. And then you just keep going and typing in this document. And so on and so forth. So this will save you a ton of time. If you have a form from the court, you can scan it in and fill it out and then save it. And you won't have to put it in a typewriter or find a typewriter or handwrite it or other things like that. So anytime somebody sends you, the other thing that I do a lot of times is when someone sends me a form in a Word document, if you've ever gotten a form in a Word document that's not a true form, you know that once you start typing into the Word document, all the lines and the spacing and things like that start shifting around, and you have to backspace a lot, and it takes a lot of time. So I just take those Word documents that look like forms, but they're not really a true form, and convert it to PDF, and then use the typewriter tool, type on top of that, and then save it. So once we've saved it, and the other thing that I have a whole video that I'm going to show you what this looks like, but if I want to add my signature, then I'm going to go add my signature down here. And this is just a scanned version of my signature, but it's a bit of a process to get this transparent. So see how the line down there, my signature, right, it's actually as if I printed it out, signed it, and put it back. But you have to make a transparent signature, so I'll send you the video on how to do that. It's not very hard, but it takes a couple of steps, and it's a bit longer of a process than we have time to do today. So once I've filled out all this document, then I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it as, because I'm going to give it a different name. Choose the default folder, and then I'm going to say, that way I don't overwrite my form. And now that document is saved. So the typewriter tool, I think, is incredibly handy for filling out either paper documents that you scanned in, Word forms that you've received, or forms that you've pulled in from the court. Another kind of handy thing is sometimes you'll get these forms from the court if they're not locked down, or you can print them out and scan it back in. But sometimes the courts are generating these PDF forms that don't give you enough characters to type in the information that you need. So there's lots of different ways to kind of get around that if you need to. In some cases, I've just emailed the court and said, could you please increase the character limit on this form field, because it doesn't have enough characters for me to actually effectively fill it out. So the next thing I'm going to show you is redaction. And so redaction is a pretty easy process, but you have to do it right. So this is a document that I'm going to use for redaction. And so redaction in Acrobat and most other products that will do redaction is a two-step process. You mark the text for redaction, and then you apply the redaction. So I'm going to go over here and type in redact. And I'm going to click on mark for redaction, text and images. You have three options. Text and images, I can redact entire pages, or I can do a search for text. So we're going to start with this. And it reminds you again, you have two steps: mark it and then apply it. Most of these little warnings and pop-ups give you the option to not show again, but I kind of find that it's useful to be reminded of important things, like until I apply it, it's not actually done. I'll click OK. And so if you click on properties, One thing to note, you have some edits that you can make to how your redactions look. Not the final version, but when you mark it. So the redacted area fill color is by default black. You can use overlay text. So for instance, if you have a Supreme Court Rule 1.13 that requires redaction, you could put an overlay that says that. Or if you have redaction codes like a FOIA or the Privacy Act, you can do that. But we'll stick with the custom text and probably spell it right. And then that's what the actual redaction is going to look like. The marked appearance, red is nice because you can see it, and we are going to have to go back through this and make sure that everything that should be redacted is before we apply it through a review process. So we're going to have it red so it's really easy to see, and click OK. It's not going to fill it in. I can have it filled in with any color I want to, but I probably want to be able to see what it is that is redacted, and you'll see why a little bit more in a second. Click OK. And so we're going to mark text for redaction, so I can just draw a box over this, and it shows it as red, so it's very easy to see what we've marked. When I mouse over it, it shows, and you can barely see Supreme Court Rule, so I'd have to change the color a little bit so it'll be easier to see. But that's what it would look like once it's redacted. This is just marked for redaction, but your other options up here, you can do an entire page, or you can do this find text. And find text is useful, but it will again pop up this warning, which I like, the reminders. This document, if it was a scan, it could contain images, line art, and other things that aren't searchable. So this is a search function, and it's just reminding you that search may not find everything in this document, so review it. And click OK. And then what happens is we get this box that pops up, and you can search just the current document. You can actually choose PDFs in a particular folder and do a batch redaction. And then you can search for a single word or phrase. You can make it whole words. You can make it case sensitive. You can do multiple words or phrases and add as many words and phrases as you want to look and mark redaction. And then the final one is patterns. So this is really convenient, but keep in mind the phone numbers these are the examples, and this is what it's looking for. If you have a phone number that doesn't look like one of these, it may or may not pick it up, which is why we always have to review. And things like credit cards, again, it's very it's going to look for examples like this. Now you may have a 16-digit number in your document that is not a credit card number, and it will mark it for redaction, but you can take off that. And then we can go through and we have some other options, email addresses, dates, things like that. So we're going to choose email addresses and click on search and remove text. The nice thing is that it will look through the document and show us what it has identified as email. And so we can go through and make the selections and have it redact all this information. And then, or you can check them all, and then mark all of this for redaction. Or we can go through and do a new search and look for a different pattern until you've marked everything that you want to for redaction. Then let's go back to this document. Once we've figured out what we want to redact, then we're going to click apply. And it pops up yet another reminder. You're about to permanently remove all contents that have been marked for redaction. Once the document is saved, this operation cannot be undone. Yes, I definitely want to. Now, the other thing it gives you the option to do when you've marked things for redaction is you can remove hidden information. That's the metadata in the document. And you can click on no, but you've got the toolbars up here. So the difference between remove hidden information and sanitize document is remove hidden information. If you click on that, it looks for the metadata in the document, and then it lets you choose what you want to remove. So if it found other things, we could toggle on and off what we wanted. Like, for instance, if this had bookmarks, well, we don't necessarily consider bookmarks metadata unless we weren't aware that they were there. But you don't have to accept it. If, however, you click on sanitize document, it removes everything, including form fields, and anything else in this list that it identifies, and it just completely removes it without giving you a lot of options to toggle on and off. So I tend to like the remove hidden information, so I have more control over it when I finalize the document. So the other thing to note is that unlike a lot of the other products for redaction, and one of the things I really, really appreciate about Adobe Acrobat is that in the upper left-hand corner, if you see for redaction, this file was named for redaction. When I applied the redaction, it created a new file called _redacted. So I did not overwrite my existing file. Which is really important because it really and truly does remove everything when you run this redaction process. So you don't have to worry about file save as, giving it a new name and all that. This process, once you apply the redaction, creates a new version of the file with appended _redaction, and then you can move along. So that's a very useful thing. If you ever want to see what happens when you don't redact a document properly, this is an actual filing with what appears to be redactions. But I cannot tell you how many stories come up over and over and over, firms getting in trouble at different levels for not redacting properly. So this document looks like it's been redacted, but if I select all this text and copy it and open a Word document, and I'll drag this over here so you can see it, and I paste it, all the text that was, and I'm putting air quotes around this, redacted, hasn't actually been redacted. And the reason is because this text here may have been in a Word document and they drew black boxes over it. There's a variety of different ways they may have done it, but the without going through this redaction process, it's not actually redacted. So however you go about doing redaction, and I have an article that I'll put in your materials that talks a little bit more about different tools and products out there that'll do redaction properly. But that is definitely something to be mindful of, is that if you don't use a proper redaction tool, your file may not be redacted. So the next thing I want to show you is how to convert an Outlook folder into a PDF. And this is particularly useful for those of you who are using Outlook and you want to be able to retain emails as part of the document, or the file rather. In some cases, if you're using some product like Clio or Rocket Matter or whatever, they've got integrations with Outlook, and you can move emails over into your file management or your document management or your practice management system. But if you don't, or if you just want to kind of wait until the end and roll all of the communication up into a single PDF, you can do that. So I'm going to drag Outlook over here. So I have a folder in Outlook, and one of the things is that when you install Acrobat, you get this these little kind of hooks, and I'm using Office 365, but this is the Outlook software that comes with Office 365 Business Premium. And when I installed Acrobat, I got this button, and so I have a couple of different choices. I can select certain messages and create a PDF out of those, or if I wanted to select this entire folder and create a new PDF, I can do that. And it basically pulls up my folder list. I can convert subfolders, and all of that. But one thing to be aware of is kind of what you want your output to look like. So we're going to go into change conversion settings. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to pull up a dialog box. And yes, we'd like to view the PDF results when they're finished. The other thing, if you do not have output PDF portfolio, this is going to create 9 individual PDFs. That may be something that you want, but I'm going to show you what a portfolio looks like because it's pretty cool in terms of a way to save entire folders full of email. So I'm going to click on output in a portfolio. We want to embed an index for faster searching because yes, you can search through that. And so we're okay with this and click OK. You may have noticed also the setup automatic archives. So if I click on this, I can say do this daily, weekly, and look in this folder, and anytime I add a new email, add it to this portfolio. So that's cool too. Again, if you don't have a document management system or a practice management system and you're filing emails in a folder for your client, and you want to be able to take those and make them much more portable as a PDF versus a OFT or a MSG or an HTML or one of the other options that you have when you save an email message out of Outlook that's usually proprietary in format, I would suggest doing this. So we've selected this folder, and we're going to create a new email, we're going to select that one and click OK. And it'll ask me where I want to save it. We'll just save it to my desktop. And I already kind of ran this one. And so what it does is it goes through and it's going to create what's called a PDF portfolio, which you can do if you're combining multiple files. You can create a PDF portfolio like this as well. So what you get is you can see who it's from, subject, and if you click on any one of these bars at the top, you can reorganize them. Size, you can search this, so you have a lot of different options. You can toggle through the different emails in here, and I can expand this if I need to be able to actually read them like that. So you'll note that what happens to documents with attachments, or emails with attachments rather, they're still there. And if I double click on this, it doesn't convert the attachments to PDF. It just shows you. And so here's the attachment with that email, still associated with the email, still available to me. It does not convert it to PDF. That's the only thing, which may or may not be problematic to you for long-term storage, but this is super useful. And again, a lot of attorneys struggle with, how do I save emails as part of the matter? This is one of my favorite ways because it just makes sense, and it's something that you kind of, in quote, bought with the product that you're using. So next thing I want to show you is headers and footers. So when we go into a document and it does not have pagination and you want to add pagination to it, I'm just going to type headers. You'll note that one of my options were also remove existing headers and footers, which is very useful. It won't remove headers and footers that were already on the document created in another product, but if there were some that you already added through Acrobat, you can remove them. So we have all sorts of options, font type and size and color, kind of what margins you want. This little button right here is super useful. And so your appearance options: shrink document to avoid overwriting the document's text and graphics. So when you're adding the header and footer and you have a document that is wider than the margins that you set, and these margins are pretty wide, the 0.5 and 1 and 1, it'll shrink the document up imperceptibly so that your footer will show, which is very nice. And then the other one is keep position and size constant when printing. So when someone flips through the document, the footer is in the same place on every one. So I really like those options. And then I can choose my numbering format and what number to start. And then I'm just going to insert page number once I've chosen what my format is. And if I wanted to put a date, I can insert the date. And then I can choose page range options. I can also add more files to this and paginate a number of files all at once. And so then you can kind of see what this looks like, and make sure you're happy with it and click OK. And now you have the date and the pagination applied to this as a footer. So the other thing that you may find yourself needing to do is Bates stamp. So we're going to close this and I'm going to type in Bates. And we're going to add Bates numbers. So it's going to ask me if I want to add some more files to this. So we'll add another file. Click on Output Options. Keep it in the same folder that we started with. Put it in a different folder. Keep the original file names, or we can append something to the beginning or the end of the stamp. Or we can replace file names with the starting and ending Bates numbers so that when we generate this, the file names become the Bates number. And then click OK. And then again, you get a lot of options. Where do you want this? If I want it in the right footer, left header, insert Bates, number of digits I want, prefixes, suffixes, and click OK. And it went through, and now you have your Bates numbers. So that process is pretty easy, and you can change the color to a different color if you want something like that. But that's Bates stamping. Now, securing a document. Remember I said that these things are totally editable until we secure them. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up a document and add security to it. So there's a couple of different things we can do. First, it's all in this protect menu down here. So if I click on this, if I click on protect using password, it's a slightly different process because you can require users to enter password for viewing or editing, but not both. So if you don't want them to be able to edit it, it basically makes it a read only. Or viewing, they'll still be able to edit the document, but they can't open it without the password. If you click on advanced options, then you're going to get some more granular controls. So now I can add multiple controls. I can require a password to open the document and a password that restricts editing. So I can disallow printing, I can disallow changes. If this were a form, then I could let them fill in the form fields, but no other changes. By default, they cannot copy text, images, or other content unless you check this box. You probably want to use the same password unless this is a password you give the person to open the document. So you'll have to give the person the password to open the document. If you just want them to be able to view it without making these changes, then obviously create two different passwords. And then once you apply it, this document is technically encrypted. So I'm going to add this. Yes, I'm using a weak password. And then click OK. It reminds you that these aren't perfect in terms of security, and then you'll have to save the document before the security is applied. Again, it appends this secured to the document, so you know that this is a secure document, which again is a very convenient file naming convention that they add for you. So that's pretty easy, and that's how you secure a document. If you want to just go straight to the advanced options, go into advanced, encrypt with password, and then you can have all these different options. The other thing is when you're securing it, it also reminds you can remove hidden information. And this again is the same process that we went through before to remove metadata. So when I click on remove hidden information, I've created a more secure document and applied whatever protections I want to. I can also go through and say I want to keep the bookmarks. I don't want those removed, but I do want to remove any comments and markup, and anything else that might be in the document. So for instance, there is a comment. It's hard to see because the comment was in the original Word document, and when I converted it to PDF, I might not have noticed that there was a comment, but it converts the Word comment to PDF, so I definitely want to remove that. I don't want to remove the hyperlinks because those are useful. And then I'm going to click remove and click OK. And so magically that comment is gone. The file properties have been removed from whatever was pulled over from the originating Word document. And, it's still got a little bit of metadata in terms of it knows things. If you look under file properties and you look at the description, it's got the file name. It can't get rid of that, but anything else that might have been in there or pulled over from the Word document has been removed. So that's how you remove metadata. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is how to digitally sign a document, and this is a little complex, and I'll do a separate video that goes through all of the steps, but just suffice to say that I want to show you what you can do if you want to further secure the document. So what I want to do here is I want to digitally sign the document. So I'm just going to type in digitally sign. And so it automatically assumes that you want to add a signature. So we'll appease it. I've already created this, and this is what I'm going to create a separate video for. You can go through, click on configure new identity, click there, click continue, fill out all this information and save it. It's not hard at all to create one of these, but I'm going to go ahead and click on view details, and this is just a self-signed document. As you can see, self-signed certificate. The certification is on my computer. And click continue. Now I have created a customized stamp, so I can just have my signature drop in there, and then I have a password for this. It's going to have you create a new, this one it doesn't automatically do it for you, and save it. Now you'll notice that what happens is, in addition to dropping in my signature, it also puts this blue bar across the top of your document, and then I can click on signature panel and I can look at that the signature is valid and it hasn't been modified. This blue bar will appear for anyone who opens the document, and it basically locks the document down. It's encrypted, it's secured, it can't be altered, and it's digitally signed. So if you really want to lock something down and also have kind of proof that it's locked down, you can digitally sign it. The other thing that you can do is, if you want to digitally sign it with an invisible signature, you can go up and actually apply a invisible digital signature. and click on this, and basically you go through the same process, except it doesn't actually put your signature on it, it just validates it. So we'll do this. I'll click on continue. I'll put in my password. And click on sign. It didn't add anything to the text. It just signed and certified the document. So a lot of times I'll use the invisible signature because I don't necessarily want to put my signature on the document. I just want to certify and secure it. So that's a little higher end stuff, but it is very useful. The last two things I'm going to show you are how to send and collaborate and how to fill and sign. So for send and collaborate, and pull up a letter and say I want to send this to somebody. I'm going to go to the send for comment, and I'm just going to send it to myself. You can make comments. You can allow someone to make comments, or you can turn that off. And then you can add a deadline and save that, and then send it. And so that's going to appear in your whoever you sent it to's inbox. They're going to click on a link. Again, they don't have to have Adobe or the Acrobat product to collaborate with you, because it's going to open up in a browser window. And so what ends up, and if you don't want to do this, I think I might have killed it. That's one thing about, I'm running a whole lot of a whole bunch of different products, and even the best computer, if you're running a whole bunch of different tools all at once, they can get bogged down. So one of the things that when you open this home tool or the home screen is that if you go to, once you've sent that document out, you can click on shared over here and you can see what's been shared, and then if anybody's commented on it. So I can see that I shared this yesterday, with whom, and then I can open up the document and it'll load any comments. So if the person made any changes to the document or added comments, if I've commented, I can see all of that. Again, if you've used multi-author collaboration in Microsoft Word or Google or something like that, it's very similar to this experience, except that they can't actually make major changes to the document. They can only comment, cross out, things like that. So the last thing really quickly that I'm going to show you is fill and sign. And this is pretty handy. So I've got a document that I want someone to sign, like I talked about before when I send over a document. So I'm going to click on fill and sign. You get two choices. I'm going to fill the document out and send it, or I'm going to get others to sign it. So we're going to request signatures. And so it's going to take the document, and I always like to click on more options and look at my advanced options, because you can always see as much as you possibly can do with this. So we're going to put in, now one thing to note, if you want people to sign this in a particular order, the default is complete in order. I can send this to multiple people. If it doesn't matter what order they send it or sign it, then you can complete in any order. And then it automatically uses the file name as the subject and puts in a little note. You can add more files here. You can also password protect this document. or you can set a reminder that will bug them every day, every week, every business day, and so on and so forth. And then we'll click on next. And it basically is going to go through and attempt to identify what are fillable form fields. So if I find this, I click on it, then it's going to set a text field. So I'm going to go through and set all these as text fields. And then for this, I'm going to choose the signature field. And then for this one, more field types, I'm going to choose a date field. And then this is going to be text, text. There's no phone number, so text, and email. And one more initials. So then you click on send. And it's going to be sent out to the recipient. They're going to get an email with a link. They're going to click on the link, and then they can initial it, sign it, date it, and all of that is really, really easy for them to do. Another thing to be aware of is if you go back to the Home tab, if you go to your agreements, you can see who signed what when. You can see that this one's been completed. I canceled or declined on something. Someone else did. The expiry date when I created a end date. So if it didn't get signed, it just gets ignored or expired. And so we can see if we'll look at one that has been completed. I'll find one that of course I'm not going to finish this because I honestly can't remember my login because I used LastPass and I'm not going to make y'all watch me do that, but it'll open it up, it'll show you the certificate, it'll show you kind of this completion audit trail and all of this other stuff. So you can basically go over here and track anything that you've sent out for signature. There was a better interface for this, but they seem to have gotten rid of it. But at any rate, so that's the very fast and probably too much information for you about Adobe Acrobat. As much as I showed you, there are 14 other things that you can do that I didn't show you. So in the interest of time, since I've gone a little over, I will pause the recording, and then if you have any questions, you can chat them to me. And if not, I will send you the video link. So just give me a second, and thank you for your attention.